council meeting. If you'd please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk.
Mayor Ziegler.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Beagle.
Here.
Councilmember Gacho.
Here.
Councilmember Resnick.
Here.
Councilmember Smiley is excused. Quorum present.
Thank you. Seems kind of lonely up here. Any changes to the agenda? Mr. Brown?
I do not have any, Your Honor.
I guess in light of the results of the last election and in light of the fact that we have 2 spots on council that are not filled, I'd like to discuss new business number 1 prior to getting started here this evening. And item number 1 happens to be the consideration of the confirmation of the mayor's recommendation to appoint Tia Grunland Fox and Peter Behrman to vacant city council seats effective immediately and with a term expiring January 1st, 2020 at 11:59 a.m. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? I guess I'd start out. I wanted to mention that it just makes sense to me because the election just occurred. And by the way, congratulations to all the winners of that election. And effective January 1st at noon, these same 2 people are going to be placed on the council for their rightfully elected terms. It made sense to me to fill those positions this time by Ms. Fox and Mr. Behrman. Anybody have any discussion?
Yeah, good idea.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Kathy, you got your swearing in?
Do.
Come on up.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the Charter and ordinances of the City of Wixom, Oakland County, Michigan, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties and responsibilities of City Council member according to the best of your ability?
Thank you. Thank you.
There's no cake, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, you know, I hadn't thought of that, darn it. Somebody's missing the boat here. Yeah, Halloween candy. Okay, I'll wait till you get seated. Everybody's seated and how's it feel down there? Feels pretty good?
There's a lot of people here. Not this many people came to my zoning board meetings.
All right, good. Okay, next item on the agenda is a public hearing to solicit community input regarding the utilization of the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program allocation. Hi, Deanna.
Hi. For those of you that aren't familiar, the public hearing is a requirement by HUD. And the Community Development Block Grant Program provides funding for the purpose of renovating older homes, revitalizing neighborhoods, providing human services, and rebuilding community infrastructures that benefits low to moderate income residents. Qualified projects must be located in the census tracts that are occupied by low and moderate income individuals and families, and that meet housing and urban or HUD guidelines concerning their criteria. In the city of Wixom, we have 2 census tracts that meet this criteria, and they cover south of Pontiac Trail. Federal regulations concerning the utilization of these funds require a public hearing to be held to solicit comments, recommendations, and requests from individuals or groups. That's why we're here tonight.
Okay. There are some rules regarding public hearings, and before I open the public hearing, I will read the rules for it. Persons desiring to address the council shall state their name and address. Individual persons shall be allowed 5 minutes to address the council. There should be no questioning by the audience of persons addressing the council. However, the council members may ask questions addressing the council. And no person shall be allowed to address the council more than once. So I will open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to address the council on the allocation of CDBG funds, please feel free to step forward. Sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Vicki Kennedy. I work for Common Ground. I live in Keego Harbor. I brought you guys some brochures so that you're a little bit familiar with the company that I'm representing today. So if I can just step over and hand them to you.
Please do.
I'm here today representing Common Ground. We're a nonprofit agency. We have been around for 48 years. Our mission is moving from people from crisis to hope, and we do that every single day. Last year, we helped 139 Wixom residents that came into our crisis center for triage and crisis intervention. First of all, I'd like to say thank you always for your continued support for Common Ground. Before I ask for my request for $5,000 from the city of Wixom to help us continue to serve the people from Wixom. Simple.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Anyone else here would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Beth Cundy, and I'm from Haven. That's located at 801 Vanguard in Pontiac, Michigan. And I also have some information sheets if I may approach.
Please.
All right, so like I said, my name is Beth, and I'm a first response court advocate with Haven. I want to begin by thanking the City of Wixom for all the help and support you have given Haven in the past. As you know, Haven is an agency that works with issues of intimate partner violence and sexual assault. Last year, your support enabled us to serve 40 clients from the City of Wixom, and we ask that you continue that support again this year. Our services enable survivors to receive free services and support to heal from the injustices of sexual assault and intimate partner violence. Most people know that we provide shelter, but we do so much more than that. We do group and individual counseling, legal advocacy, PPO assistance, and safe and compassionate forensic exams. So if you are unable to financially support us, we just ask that you help spread the word about our agency. And thank you. And if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer all of them.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Dillon, and I actually am also a resident. I live at 48261 Pontiac Trail, and I am here representing St. William Catholic Church, St. Vincent de Paul Society. We have frequently helped a lot of people in the Wixom area, and we appreciate all the help that we've gotten from the block grants in the past. And last year, we helped 16 households with a total of $6,814. $5,062 was used for those facing eviction. $1,400 was for utility shut-off assistance, $302 for home repair, and $50 for transportation expenses. And we appreciate all the help that you have in the past, and hope to have more in the future.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Donovan Neal. I'm representing Hospitality House. I live in Commerce Township. On behalf of Hospitality House Food Pantry, I would like to request that a minimum of $5,000 in community block development grant monies be made available to help assist the pantry in providing food assistance to the low-income residents of Wixom. In the past 6 months of 2019, Hospitality House has distributed over 212,000 pounds of food to 593 Wixom households, of which 103 were unique households. Wixom is the second largest beneficiary of Hospitality House's food services, and each client received approximately 51 pounds of food per visit from the pantry. Every month, we allow families with incomes below 200% of the federal poverty level to come and shop our pantry, selecting the foods that best meet their family needs. CBDG funding will allow the agency to continue to provide this type of assistance and will allow us to increase our provision of services to the city by offering transportation assistance in the form of low-cost car repair, which we have received seed funding and expecting to launch in January of 2020. We actually launched that program this week with our first client, assisting a woman with her car repair. Of course, individuals who do know about Hospitality House know us for our food pantry services. What often people do not recognize is that we also are one of the only providers of emergency transitional shelter housing in Oakland County. And to put that in perspective, we just recently assisted a woman who was living in her car. Her husband had left her, ran away with all the resources, and she was in a local hotel here. And she had received funding from even one of the agencies that's represented here tonight. And she approached Hospitality House, and we were able, using the funding that we have, to put her up in a hotel for up to 30 days in one of the local hotels here in the area. And that particular program is designed to make sure that, it's called Breathing Room, and it's designed to make sure that those individuals have a place to go after they leave the hotel. And I'm happy to say that that individual now has completed her stay at the hotel, and she's now a Wixom resident living up the road here in the Village Apartments. So again, I'm thanking the council in advance for all the help that the council has provided for us, and again, we're hoping that you would consider us again this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bridget Jamian from Western Oakland Meals on Wheels. I reside at 3038 White Oak Beach in Highland, Michigan. And I'm here to ask the consideration of $5,000 worth of the CDBG money be allocated to Western Oakland Meals on Wheels to help the senior residents in Wixom. Meals on Wheels serves seniors 60 and older that are homebound, frail, can't get out, can't cook for themselves, and are virtually stuck in their homes. They don't want to go into a nursing home. They want to stay in their homes, so by providing services in their homes, they're able to do that. One of the key components is our volunteer drivers that take them the meals and do a safety check on them and look at them, talk to them Monday through Friday to make sure they're doing okay and that the meals are helping them. Under our grant with the area agency, we are able to serve meals Monday through Friday, and with additional funds, we can serve weekend meals and some breakfast meals to seniors of Wixom. Today was a snow day, which is really weird because it's November. Last year we had 9 in January and February. We send out blizzard boxes, which are shelf-stable meals, so that the seniors can have meals available on days like this when we aren't able to deliver. We do call on days like this to make sure that they're okay, and we're also available to them. So if they had some other needs and didn't have food or didn't know what to do with their food, we would take it out to them. We appreciate your consideration. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening on the allocation of CDBG funds? Seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing. Next item on the agenda are the approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes this evening. The first is the joint council DDA, Planning Commission, and ZBA meeting of October 21st, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Anybody have any suggestions relative to the minutes or comments, corrections? Seeing no one. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. The other set of minutes is for the approval of the regular city council meeting of October 22nd, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Any corrections? Any corrections from anybody watching it on the computer screen? We've lost our audience. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. We have one item of correspondence, a note of thanks from the Beagle family. Next item on the agenda is the first call to the public. And I'll read the rules for public speaking, which are different from the public hearing. Call to the public. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority of the vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Anybody wishing to speak to the council this evening on any agenda items? Seeing no one approach, I will close the first call to the public. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine by the city and shall be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Excuse me, Mayor.
How did I miss that? Yeah, the city manager's reports.
I'd like to pull an item.
Oh.
Consent.
Oh, I'm sorry, I went too fast. I'm sorry. Which item would you like to?
The cemetery board.
Cemetery board? Okay, we'll take that off the consent agenda. And move that to new business number 8.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, we're going to revote that, except with the exclusion of that one item, the cemetery board report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Now we'll go back to city managers' reports. We have 2 city managers' reports. One is the fire report from September 2019. Anybody have any questions, comments? No? Okay. How about the police report from September 2019? Mr. Gottschall.
Thank you. Regarding, we had an uptick in traffic or automotive accidents, and I'm wondering with our new traffic officer, if we've noticed just in general, any particular trouble areas that are ongoing with accidents or speeding or where dangerous driving is leading to accidents?
Sure. So the main intersection that we have most accidents or crashes would be Grand River and Wixom Road. I think that's been right now as in the past. Other than that, I would say no, there's no additional areas of note.
Is there anything that, is it mainly people trying to squeeze in a left-hand turn with traffic, would you say?
I would say that's probably the biggest problem, correct. The lighting down there is quite difficult to understand. And people, of course, always try to make the light, so.
Okay.
That would be the reason that I would know.
Is there anything that the police department thinks that we can do at this point to help lessen the issues down there? Or?
So interesting enough, I just talked to the traffic safety officer, it was just yesterday, and he's actually had conversations with the road commission. And I believe in the spring, they're discussing changing the lighting pattern there, which should hopefully alleviate some of those problems.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and there is no unfinished business. Which takes us to new business. We start with new business item number 2, consideration of the mayoral appointment of Michael Monahan to the cemetery board with a term to expire June 30th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Any discussion? I have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Monahan to the cemetery board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is recommendation to authorize the submittal of the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program allocation of $51,165 with $5,000 to Haven, $5,000 to Emergency Services, and $5,000 to Disabled Services, and $36,165 to the Civic Center improvements. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Ms. McGee.
As we indicated earlier, it is the Community Development Block Grant application, and in the past with the public service agencies, what we've tried to do is rotate to each agency every other year, with the exception of we have funded Haven. So just to try to be fair to all of them, because I think we've always wanted to fund as many as possible. We're only allowed to fund 4 projects total. Of those 4 projects, 3 can be public services. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions like that.
Ms. Grunland-Fox.
Hi. So as I was reading over this, I was trying to understand kind of how it was all allocated and that. And I guess I'll start at the beginning. So what is disabled services? Which of these would fall under disabled services?
The one that is here tonight is Common Ground. And disabled services classifies under psychiatric and crisis.
Okay. And then I see that the funding is allocated to a specific agency, such as emergency services, but not, a specific category, but not a specific agency.
Correct. By the HUD, the block grant rules, you can authorize to a category. And once we receive a letter to spend the funds, which will be next December, then we as a city actually post a public notice for anyone in emergency services that would like to reapply for those funds. And the criteria is written by the city according to what council's direction is on the public service agencies they'd like to fund.
So then does it come before council again at that time?
No.
Okay. So how is it determined which of those specific agencies that apply for that money that's out there get it?
It's basically based on your discussion as far as what agencies you'd like to fund. Mm-hmm. These are all agencies we funded in the past. And our staff sets the criteria, and it has to be posted in a public place. And if there was another emergency services, say for example, hospitality in St. Vincent, they can both come back and request the funding. However, the criteria is written specifically towards council's direction on which service they would like. So for example, Hospitality House is a food pantry, St. Vincent is emergency rent, et cetera. So the criteria would be spelled out in that.
Oh, okay, I see. And then my other question was, so with the 36,000 to the Civic Center improvements, I see that that's going to be a pathway.
As we, I'm not sure if you recall, but during the budget sessions, we did propose a Civic Center pathway. And at that point in time, it was proposed that we should secure more grant funding towards that total of $173,000. So funding this project with 2 years of CDGB and hopefully a third.
And who will that path benefit?
Well, the path has to benefit low to moderate income. So we have to be approved by the block grant people. And since we are on the south side of Pontiac Trail, we qualify as project.
Oh, so just because of where we're located, basically? Okay.
Basically set up as low, moderate quartiles, basically is what the terminology was once upon a time. So there's areas of the city that are designated as having a certain portion of low, moderate income people in it. That area south of Pontiac Trail qualifies for that, and with the location of the path being in that area, it fits the criteria and is eligible for funding under CDBG.
Okay. So if we didn't use that money for that path, could that money go to some of those other agencies, or are we still capped on how much?
No, it cannot. We are capped at 30% of our total.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Sure. Mr. Beagle.
Thank you. I do notice that Haven requested 4,000, we're granting them 5,000. Why we?
The rationale is on, my recommendation was just to break it out evenly at 5,000 each.
Okay, and then going back to the Civic Center pathway, kind of my understanding that during budget session that it really wasn't a favorable project. And I mean, if it's going to be $172,000, you know, it's going to take 3 or 4 years of this, plus if we get a grant, couldn't we find something around here that would benefit more from that immediately?
We're proposing, City Council can recommend whatever they would like us to do the projects for. That is just one project that there was some interest in, and it was recommended to seek more funds for that project.
Do we have to dedicate tonight what that money is going to go for, or can we allocate it at a later date, just have that in our CBD funds?
It will need to be dedicated.
Okay.
You will have an option, just so you know though, if any of these funds that you would like to change, they can be reprogrammed at a later date.
Okay.
It's a public hearing and a process.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Resnick.
Maybe just clarification too, it says Civic Center improvements, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's routine, but for over the 20 years that I've been doing this, it seems like it changes a lot to be called routine. And I think that the reason is because the federal government has their rules, and then the county has an office that distributes this money to the different communities, and then they come up with these rules, and they tighten up the rules in certain areas, and they're constantly doing this. My recollection over the years is that we have taken a look at the different agencies, and we appreciate all of them, and if we had our, speaking of years ago in discussions of this, had we had our way, we'd have just divided everything up evenly to everybody and be done with it. The problem is that the rules are in there, and they restrict the number of agencies you can fund to, and so that years ago we decided as a council to kind of have the administration take a look at this and just kind of alternate year to year as best we can, so that we are being as even-handed as possible with the funds. And with respect to the monies that are being set aside for projects, city projects, or community projects, we have done that before as far as change things. We've rededicated, we've changed our minds and so on. I know that I was one of the ones that was somewhat favorable to a pathway during the budget meetings, and I thought that it was probably a good thing to plan to have some sort of path, because the seniors over there certainly would like to go outside and exercise. If they're exercise, they do that a lot. They have exercises, and I would really hate to see one of them get hit by a car. So I'd like to have a path so they can walk on the path, especially since I might be walking someday soon. So anyway, we have a motion. Let me read the motion again. We have a motion and a second to authorize the submittal of the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program allocation of $51,165 with $500 to Haven, $500 to emergency services, and $5,000 to disabled services, and $36,165 to civic center improvements. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Deanna. Next item on the agenda is a recommendation to approve a proposed site plan subject to the conditions outlined in the Planning Commission motion of October 7th, 2019 regarding the BP gas station at the corner of Old Wixom Road and Pontiac Trail, and authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to sign the first amendment to the consent judgment governing the property. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Brown, you want to?
Your Honor, we have Kelly McIntyre here from CIB Planning to assist with either a presentation or simple questions and answers, whatever the mayor and council's preference would be on that front. This goes back some time where we had a prior meeting of mayor and council where we discussed how to proceed with a potential new addition to the BP gas station at this location. There was a process that was established at that time. We've gone through multiple steps of that process, starting off with having an initial presentation made to mayor and council, and then the mayor and council had the opportunity to either refer it to Planning Commission for further study or not. It was referred to Planning Commission for further study. The Planning Commission then conducted their review of it, which we have provided the excerpt from the minutes that covers that, and they did recommend to mayor and council that the site plan be approved subject to certain conditions which are spelled out in the report, consisting of a waiver for parking lot screening, a waiver for parking lot landscaping, and acceptance of a tree and 15 shrubs planted along the west property line as opposed to the south property line, as a change that came up during their discussion. Consistent with that recommendation to the Planning Commission, we're now bringing it to council for council to make the final decision as to whether they want to approve the site plan as presented for development of the site or redevelopment of the site, and then secondly, to authorize the signing of a first amendment to the consent judgment which governs the property. This property is subject to a consent judgment that was a result of litigation that began in the past and was settled with this consent judgment. The consent judgment has certain things that it allows and certain things that it doesn't allow on the property. This particular site plan would require an amendment to the consent judgment to make that possible and consistent with the consent judgment. We had previously had that consent judgment prepared by our city attorney, consistent with mayor and council direction as well. And that consent judgment, our first amendment to consent judgment, has been signed by the property owner in advance. So we'd be looking for two actions from the council tonight: approval of the site plan and also authorization to sign the first amendment to the consent judgment to make it consistent with that. And then from there, we can have Ms. McIntyre make a presentation or just field questions from you as you see fit.
Do you have a short presentation to make?
I can go over the basics of it, or whatever you would like. I'm happy to do either one.
Sure, why don't you?
All right, I'll give you a little
So
bit
especially since we have some new,
Absolutely.
or at least one new person.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, this property is in the VCA, the Village Center area. However, because it was developed under the consent agreement, is looked at and reviewed under the B3 commercial standards, with the exception of the facade. We actually reviewed the facade according to the VCA standards, which are elevated, so to speak. This property, basically, they're going to expand their existing 3,182 square foot convenience store by adding 4,400 square feet. So they're more than doubling it. It'll be 7,582 square feet. In order to do that, they need to take a portion of a lot that they own to the south and combine it in order to make room for parking and some detention. They aren't making any changes to the actual pumps. They will be adding a gas-powered generator to the rear of the property, northwest corner of the building, and then they will also be adding a 1,000-gallon DEF tank, diesel emission fluid tank on the west side of the building. Both of those will be well screened with a brick wall, so you will not be able to see those. The brick wall will match the actual facade of the new building. Basically, the entrances stay the same. There's no change in circulation. There is added parking as a result of the expansion of the size. As far as the waivers that they're asking for, parking lot landscaping, we require that parking lot islands be landscaped and have a tree. Because of the nature of this project and maintenance, they felt that it would be better if they just keep it mulched. And the Planning Commission agreed and felt that that waiver was a good idea. Also, they have some trees that they're required to plant, and it's supposed to be on the west property line, the south property line, but the Planning Commission felt that they would be better served on the west property line. So when you're driving on the Pontiac Trail, it would help buffer the rear of the building as opposed to buffering this from the south. So they went ahead and thought that that was acceptable as well. The architecture is nice. They spent a lot of time on that. There's details that include the canopy, windows. They have a peaked roof. The actual building looks like it is 2 stories, however, it is not, and that has to do with some of the architectural elements. They vertically break up the building with different materials, and it helps break up the expanse. The height of the building is 31 feet, which meets the VCA standards. And other than that, I think covered most of the basics of it. It does meet, with the exception of the 3 conditions or the waivers that I listed, it meets all of the zoning requirements. The Planning Commission was quite happy with it. They said it looked really good and it would be a nice improvement to the corner. And they appreciated the moving the greenery so that the best value of the greenery would be at the west portion of the property. Okay, if you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Ms. Grunland Fox.
Hi.
Hi.
The only question I have is, I see in the minutes from the Planning Commission that someone had asked about some things that were supposed to be changed that were not changed. So I'm just wondering, was everything changed that was required to be changed?
Changed on, I'm sorry if you could point me to.
I'm just looking at page 9 of the minutes from October 7th. And it's just, it struck me and said that,
I know what you're talking about, yes, okay, yes. Any concerns and changes have all been addressed.
They have?
They have been. We've met with the applicant several times, all that has been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Beagle.
Thanks. I just have one concern, and it's, I'm not a big fan of the 1,000-gallon DEF tank sitting next to the station. I know it's going to be screened and all that, but that's a pretty big tank, and that's the downtown area. And people are going to be driving up to that to access that, correct?
You shouldn't be able to see it. It will be.
But how are, people are going to have to, how are we?
Well, it'll have an underground pump. It'll have a pump that will come, maybe the applicant can answer better, but basically that's the tank that will hold it. I believe that there's a pump that will come out, and then at the diesel.
We couldn't bury that and get it away from the building?
Well, I think you can. I'm not sure, I think that's a larger investment as far as that goes. I'm not sure if, that would have to be carefully done, because then you would have to also watch the existing tanks that are under there, so it would be a bit more complicated. I don't know. I know that that is certainly a solution, but we felt that the screening of the wall was
That's just a concern of mine, is I don't want that tank close to the building in case something were ever to happen, so, thank you.
Mr. Resident.
So the, my question was also those, the brick enclosures. Do they match then architecturally the building brick?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they will be
And they're-
new, they will match the dumpster enclosure and the new building with the same brick.
And so the dumpster enclosure will also have the brick?
Yes.
And it's going to be 6 foot high for the def tank as well?
Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. I do know that it
It will completely shield the
yeah,
def
it will
tank?
completely shield it, as
6
well as
feet.
that generator that's there. So there'll be a generator and then the def tank, and they'll be enclosed or shielded.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? I have a motion and a second to approve a proposed site plan subject to the conditions outlined in the Planning Commission motion of October 7th, 2019 regarding the BP gas station at the corner of Old Wixom Road and Pontiac Trail, and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to sign the First Amendment to the consent judgment governing the property. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you. Yep.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation to approve the purchase of 4.9 acres of former Grand Trunk Western Railroad Company property from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for $8,800 for the purpose of developing Phase 2 of the Michigan Airline Trail west of Wixom Road to Old Plank Road. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Discussion? Steve, do you have anything you want to say about it?
Not in particular, other than I'll just do it briefly. Under Phase 1 of the trail, the city was one of 3 owners, if you will, that were part of the Trailway Council that was the real owner of the purchased rail line that was handled in the past, I believe in 2017, with the procurement of that or the purchase of that. Because of that nature of ownership there, the fact that it wasn't owned exclusively by the city of Wixom, we weren't able to utilize certain revenue sources that we have available to us for this kind of work. And by procuring this section of the trail in Phase 2 that runs to the west of Wixom to Old Plank Road, we will have that additional flexibility depending on whether we need it or choose to utilize it. For that purpose, we went ahead and approached the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, the owner of that section of rail property. It was a pretty long process that we went through with submitting an application and waiting for them to provide an answer back. We just recently got the information that they were prepared to sell that property to us for that sum of $8,800. It's in the report. And there's some information in there about how affordable that is. When you get down to it, it's less than $1,800 per acre. It's about $1.67 per linear foot over the approximate mile of the trail that would be involved, or the rail that would be involved. So we think that it's a worthwhile investment on our part, a very affordable investment on our part to allow ourselves some additional flexibility and have control of that property so that when we proceed with development of Phase 2 of the trail, we'll have the maximum flexibility available to us, and that's pretty much the only thing that I would mention up front.
Okay, Mr. Gassel, you had a question.
Thank you. We haven't really gotten into Phase 2 of the trail. What does the timeline and cost look like for that?
I'm trying to remember the dollar amount of the cost. We have procured another significant grant from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation to cover up to, I believe it was it $900,000? Is that correct? And the approximate estimate of the cost, Deanna, do you remember? I don't know that.
Not real.
Yeah, I'd have to revisit that. I had that information in my head there a couple weeks back, and I'm trying to come up with it now, and it's not coming to me. But it's just north of that number. Basically, it runs about $1 million per mile, and that's roughly what we're speaking of right now. So it's in that ballpark of around $1 million total. That's without factoring in any of the additional things that maybe become involved in additional amenities and things of that nature. But for the basic paving, it's in that ballpark.
So then I'm seeing it looks like it would connect, it'd basically be an island of paved trail because either side of it would be unfinished. Is that correct?
There's a connection that has to be made for, it doesn't run all the way, the MDNR, the Department of Natural Resources owned property does not run all the way to Wixom. There are pieces of property that we have to get taken care of in terms of either easements or other things that we're negotiating on right now with private ownership to determine and make those connections, I guess is how I would put it. Right now, the first section of the trail, phase one, as you know, we had a ribbon cutting scheduled for this week that was canceled because of I don't know, unfavorable weather conditions that are forecast. So we're going to get that rescheduled, but that ends at Wixom, and the current plan is just to bring it down, if you will, down Wixom Road to Pontiac Trail, and then ultimately connect back up with Finnish Trail later on down the path, if you will. But we are looking to proceed with the development of phase two, and there are, as you rightly point out, some connections to be made so that we can reach the property that we're going to be procuring if we get approval on this. But there are a few things that we have in the works on that front. We're actively pursuing it.
Okay. Going over this ahead of time, I was kind of like a maybe on this because there wasn't any other detail about grants we had received for the work or what the cost was going to be or anything of that sort. Just, hey, let's buy this land. And in the past, I know if we feel that we've spent any money on something, we should keep doing it. So that was my concern, but it's good that Mr. Wilson's so giving, and that's helpful. So that has changed my mind a bit. Thank you.
And just to put anybody else's mind at ease on that, obviously this amount of investment isn't anything that's you can't walk back from kind of thing if things become more complicated or costs become far beyond what's expected, which I don't anticipate, but it's a minor investment that allows us greater flexibility in the future.
And in that regard, there's an alternate route that can be taken, as I understand it. In fact, I think I've ridden it before, that goes across down in front of the golf course and then comes back over across Old Plank Road and carries on from there.
Right. We're looking at multiple different options if need be.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Behrman?
I guess my only other question is with regards to the rest of this property after the city of Wixom ends, is someone else looking to develop that part that's not developed?
Milford Township is actively involved with discussions with us, as well as the people that are supporting the Michigan Airline Trail from the county and our trail manager in discussions to extend it all the way through Milford Township. That's correct. And we'll ultimately connect at the west to the Huron Valley Trail is the game plan. And Milford Township is on board, if you will, with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one point of clarification then. So the segment between the city limits and Sporter with Milford Township and Old Plank Road, that's Milford Township. And would that ever come under the Trailway designation, Michigan Airline Trail?
It will.
It will. So this small segment will be City of Wixom, including future repairs, maintenance.
Well, the
right?
intent is it will all be part of the airline trail initiative. Basically, I mean, the city will still retain ownership of the property itself, but the overall trail, the Michigan Airline Trail, as it runs from Commerce through Walt Lake and Wixom and into Milford Township, will be considered part of the airline trail, if you will.
So
we won't be ceding ownership of the property, mind you, but I mean, it's going to be part of that trail.
So theoretically, if an endowment is set up for the future upkeep and maintenance, it would go from tip to tail, end to end for the Michigan Airline Trail, including this segment.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That would be certainly what we'd be advocating for, and the discussions among the Trailway Council are consistent with that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to refer a proposed site plan regarding the VP. I'm sorry. I got a motion and a second to waive the bid process. Oh, that's the wrong one too. All right, I'm here. We got a motion and a second to approve the purchase of 4.9 acres of former Grand Trunk Western Railroad Company property from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for $8,800 for the purpose of developing Phase 2 of the Michigan Airline Trail west of Wixom Road to Old Plank Road. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a recommendation to waive the bid process and award the Wixom Road Sidewalk Construction Project to Commerce construction of Milford, Michigan, in an amount not to exceed $52,175. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Or discussion?
Yeah, so what I'd start with on this is consistent with that last item that we just had. The phase 1 of the Michigan Airline Trail is about to have our ribbon cutting is essentially completed. And until we get phase 2 developed, we need to have a workaround, if you will, to avoid that area that's unfinished currently on phase 2 through the city of Wixom and into Milford Township. And as I mentioned in that last discussion item, it's going to run down Wixom, get down to Pontiac Trail, cross over Wixom, and then ultimately cross back over Pontiac Trail and connect up with the Huron Valley Trail by doing that workaround of the phase 2 until it's completed. We had been, we lack a sidewalk connection from a portion of the area where the phase 1 of the trail ends and that Pontiac Trail area. And we really didn't have any hope of obtaining an easement on that for a very long period of time, and then all of a sudden, let's say discussions broke in a different direction, and all of a sudden we were able to work out an agreement on that, and that was kind of after the period of time when we would have been able to go through a proper bid process on this, and we wanted to move quickly on it to allow us to make that sidewalk connection so that when people do reach the end of the trail, they'll have somewhere to go to get down to Pontiac Trail in a finished fashion. So we want to add sidewalk in that area. Because of the nature of the situation where we didn't have the easement secured ahead of time in a timely fashion to allow us to do a proper bid process, we want to do that in a way that's timely and allows us to get this done to allow for the connection to the trail. We're advocating this awarding of a contract to Commerce Construction for this amount of $52,175 and waiving the bid process because of those circumstances. It's not an ideal situation. We would prefer to bid this out. If we don't approve the waiver of the bid process, we will not be able to get the work done before it's too late to get the work done this year. And then we'll have the situation where the trail will be finished, but we will not have the sidewalk connection to Pontiac Trail. So the basic idea here is to invest on the basis of that time issue now and get that sidewalk done by awarding this contract in the amount of $52,175 to this company.
Thank you. And I think that just a reminder, I think that in order to waive the bid process, that there has to be 100% of the vote of council. So
correct.
Just as a reminder for anybody who might be new.
And we did go back and evaluate this just as a further piece of information. There was a prior sidewalk work that was done many years ago that we basically just applied a basic cost increase factor to get up to a figure that's not quite $52,175, but we're also looking at a situation where the materials costs have kind of skyrocketed in the past year's time. It has not been a typical inflationary kind of increase situation. The costs have far exceeded that recently. So while this likely represents somewhat of a premium over what we may have been able to accomplish through a bid process, I don't think that it's a large amount of difference. It's strictly a guess at this point. But it's my opinion that we probably aren't too far off from what the market would bear at this point.
Discussion. Ms. Grillen-Fox.
Tim? Thank you. So I know it's been talked about that the best thing to do, or the more favorable thing to do, would be to wait not wait, but to do a bid process.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that we have a sidewalk program.
We do.
So you'll go out to bid in the spring or maybe this winter for the sidewalk program for next year, for the 2020?
That's correct.
Okay. So we could add this on and potentially get a better price for this period. I shouldn't say could we.
Potentially, yes. There are a couple other things that add to this cost because it's Wixom Road. There's a traffic concerns, and there's special equipment that they were using to bring up the grade a little bit with sand, and so they would have different machines for that, and also road closures and safety issues.
And if I can expand on that, I should have mentioned that. I'm glad Tim is catching me in my oversight. The proximity to Wixom Road is very tight, so that's where the safety issues come up and require some additional considerations that are adding to the cost.
We don't anticipate the next year's, even starting until, possibly July. And so it would extend it out almost a year, well, 9 months. So
You don't
I think that's
anticipate-
your question.
Okay. You don't anticipate that the sidewalk work would start until next July?
That's when, yes, because a lot of the other concrete work is with the roads until then. But, we could,
The larger dollar road projects take precedent on that, and that's why we'll be looking at a little bit of a later start point than first in the spring.
we had them out, I think we authorized bids back in February. We still didn't get our Grand River ones done until August. And I just anticipate that occurring the same this year.
Okay. So if we approve this tonight, when would this work be?
We're anticipating that they get in next week to do this, and it'll take 2 days, I believe, 2 or 3 days to get that.
So even with this weather, that won't impact that at all?
Don't anticipate that being a problem.
Before Thanksgiving.
Before Thanksgiving is the goal.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Resnick?
Yeah, I just want to bring up one point I brought up with Mr. Aventini many, many times, particularly when we were talking about the Menards property in the PUD. Heavily traveled trails, 5 feet widths are not enough, especially if you have mixed pedestrian and bicycle traffic. It's actually very dangerous. And we see that right now in front of PNC Bank along Pontiac Trail. And I don't know if the space allows it, but man, I mean,
It's
5
really
feet.
tight there with the house that is there. Even at that, we're really encroaching on the property.
And this, my belief is it's going to be very, very heavily traveled. We saw that during the block party. I put up that makeshift sign.
Yes.
So we absolutely must also make sure we put a sign up there to prevent people from just running out into Wixom Road or rolling out there on their bikes, that they're to head south to the Wixom Road crossing too. So if that gets finished, we should do that first thing in the spring, because people will be using it. So if there's any way to make it wider, even if it's 6 inches, I mean, it's very dangerous at 5 feet.
Yep.
Those were my old sidewalks in the city of Detroit when I was growing up, were 5 foot. Very narrow, so, right.
We'll go to the maximum that we can there. It is a very tight fit, as Tim has referenced.
Mr. Beer?
That was my first question, was, we're talking about the section of property in front of that house that's in between the condos and the trail?
Yes.
And I guess my second question would be, why would we not look at possibly doing a crossing there with, flashing pedestrian lights and take them to where the sidewalk already is across the street?
We do intend to do that. The properties across the street are not owned by the city yet, but we're working out that detail
Not
as well.
just,
It's just
the sidewalk's already there, you couldn't even just do a sidewalk to the sidewalk?
We do plan to do that as well.
Okay.
We can do that, but not right now.
Okay.
Mr. Gossel?
Thank you. Not in favor of this. And again, being in the position where we're waiving the bid process like we did with the new leaf collection trailer, planning wise, we should know that we don't have sidewalks somewhere, rather than realizing it once a trail's done and a ribbon cutting is put somewhere. I was looking back through the meeting minutes because I know we had talked about the Safety Path program. Looking back to September 24th, we gave HRC an award for design and whatnot. Looks like their timeline says offering bids out in April of 2020 for that project, and then construction starting June 2020. So to me, we've not had sidewalks there forever. So I would rather we talk about the benefits of us awarding large contracts, whether it's parking lots or this or that, to try and take care of cost based on scale. And to me, it makes more sense just waiting a few months. I don't anticipate people are going to be out once we start to get even more snow, or as many people, as Councilman Behrman kind of alluded to, putting hawk lights out like they have at Benstein Road is something that, I mean, we can easily do a curb cut over at the other sidewalk and put in the little safety grid and make sure people have lighting and whatnot. So unfortunately, I will be voting no on this tonight.
I guess my only concern would be with voting no, if we can't do the hawk lights this year, is the safety of people just riding out in the street anyways and someone getting hit and killed. I mean, I'd be willing to support either option, but I think we need to do something.
And we'll definitely look into the hawk signals as soon as possible. We would be working with the road commission on that because it's a Wixom Road.
Mr. Costin?
Thank you. I think we can definitely put signage out to let people know that the trail ends and there's a main road and they no longer have the right of way. But to me, and that's under $3,000, so that's something that can be handled administratively, I would guess. So to me, that's, if we put out some warnings that, hey, path is coming to an end in 200 yards or whatever, and give people some heads up, then for now, it's not like we're talking about not putting sidewalks there, period. I mean, we're just talking about including it in a planned project, essentially. And I think we will see a benefit to the costs there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have make sure I get the right one here. We have a motion and a second to waive the bid process and award the Wixom Road Sidewalk Construction Project to Commerce Construction of Milford, Michigan, in an amount not to exceed $52,175. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Mayor Ziegler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Beagle?
Yes.
Councilmember Behrman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchel?
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
No.
Councilmember Resnick?
Yes.
4 yes, 2 no.
Thank you. Back to the drawing board.
Indeed.
Yes, sir.
Next item on the agenda is recommendation to award a 5-year agreements for the operation, maintenance, and management of water and wastewater facilities to F&V Operations of Grand Rapids, Michigan, for an annual cost in year one of $1,184,363, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreements on behalf of the city. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Tim?
So as you know, the contract for the operation maintenance of the water and wastewater facilities in Wixom went through July 1 of this year, and through negotiations with Suez, there was additional financing that they were requesting for future contracts with us, and to the point where it was over 26% of their current agreement, and with the additional costs, we felt that it was prudent to take this out to bid. So in July, we took this out to bid, and we had 5 proposals received, and after reviewing them with Black & Veatch, whom you guys authorized us to work with, we were able to interview with 4 of these companies, and the best the fit that we found was F&V, and we feel that their proposal was more in line with the services and needs of the community, and their price was reasonable as well. So that is our recommendation to approve a 5-year contract with 2 5-year renewals if we so choose.
Okay, discussion. Anyone? Mr. Resnick?
I just had one question on the contract itself. I noticed that in the termination There's really no discussion about change in majority of ownership. Would that be a concern at all to the city if FVOP was, if there was a change in majority of ownership of the company? You know, a lot of contracts allow this as one of a potential cause for termination of the contract.
So there are termination clauses in the current, or the contract as recommended, and we would have that choice. Over the past years with the Suez contract, they were purchased several different times, and the city worked through those differences without incident. So it is a concern, but we have contract language that would protect the city on that one.
Yeah, I didn't see any that specifically spelled out change of ownership. I did for material breaches and things of that sort, but you had no issues when Suez changed ownership then?
No.
Okay. I had a couple other small questions I'll still look for.
Sure.
Mr. Beagle.
Thank you. I noticed here that it says the agreement reflects a first-year cost of $1,184,363, subject to a annual pricing adjustment for subsequent years based on the Consumer Price Index capped at 3.25. This was not included in the RFP solicitation. It was intended to be a negotiation. Have we negotiated that term yet?
It's reflected in here as the 3.25 cap on the CPI.
Okay, well, it says that it was negotiated, but it was a negotiated term, but it doesn't say that. Is it in the contract itself?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I was saying there, sorry if it wasn't clear, and that's my fault, was that
I overlooked it then.
we left that as an open item to be negotiated during the process, and consistent with that, we negotiated that, and what's reflected in the contract is the 3.25.
Okay, so the highest it'll go over the course of the 5-year contract will be 3.25 a year.
That's correct.
Thank you.
One of the concerns that I had, and I think I've spoken to the city manager about, the employees, have they been offered employment with the new contractor if it's approved?
If it is approved, they have been in contact with all of the employees locally, and they have received resumes, and I believe they are working to hire as many as I think right now, what is it, 6?
Yeah, there was 6 of the 7 employees that would have been interviewing have interviewed, and the other one is going to be rescheduled for another day because of a timing conflict that came up with that interview. So they've had interviews. We anticipate that some or all of them could be offered by FVOP. I don't know. That's up to them to make that decision, but I would expect that the majority, or possibly as many as all of them, could receive offers from FVOP. I don't know how that will play out.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick, did you find the questions that you had there?
Yeah, and I think it answered itself, Tim. If there was a change in state law, let's say, like you saw with PFAS,
yes,
over the recent years, that's covered as well. If there's a new reporting requirement for maximums, minimums, or whatever, or testing.
yes.
I know that if it exceeded 10% of the cost of the contract, they're allowed to come back in and renegotiate that, but otherwise it would be included, and they'd be responsible for covering those as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Gottschalk.
Thank you. Regarding the asset management plan that HRC worked on in the past for us, have they had a chance to review that, or did all of the vendors that bid have a chance to review that? And
Yes.
were there any issues that were raised, or?
No issues that were raised that were notable. We're working through some of those with our capital improvement program, and we would start talking about that, during the budget sessions. We included that as part of the RFP as one of the addendums. There were actually several addendums that we tacked in there just for information regarding the city, and one of them was that asset management plan.
And do they have experience kind of implementing upgrades to plants as well?
Yes, they have worked with, several construction companies through those processes in the past. And, within our interview, we didn't anticipate any problems with future use on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to award 5-year agreements for the operation, maintenance, and management of water and wastewater facilities to F&V Operations of Grand Rapids, Michigan, for an annual cost in year one of $1,184,363, and to authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreements on behalf of the city. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Tim. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the cemetery board meeting. What was the date of that? I got it right here. June 5th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Cemetery.
Cemetery board.
Thank you.
Sure.
So when I was looking through the minutes, I just had a couple questions about how many inquiries there were into the columbarium, and then if that would go out to bid.
Yeah, so brief answer on that. We looked at a couple of different providers for those kind of pieces of equipment, if you will, for the cemetery function. We do intend to go out for bid on that. The discussion during the board meeting was specifically on going out to bid on that front, so we do intend to go out for bid.
Have there been a lot of inquiries into having that? Is that kind of how it came about? Just
Yeah, there's been several residents that have been interested in it, and repeatedly interested in it and making inquiries about it. We had Ed Lynch, who's a local luminary in the funeral home business, that also has worked with us in terms of trying to come up with an understanding of what would be involved and what would be appropriate, and considerations to have in mind when we're considering implementing this kind of add-on to the services at our cemetery. So he's worked with us a lot at a couple meetings now. I wanted to thank the cemetery board for the fact that they've been having multiple meetings. They typically meet once a year, and they're working harder than usual, that's for sure, with a couple of meetings in just a few months. And we'll be having another one once we get down to the point of having the bid processes completed and have a discussion about what it looks like there for their courtesy as well. So we do intend to go out for bids without a doubt. And we have one quote that tells us the cost on what we might be interested in. Again, we still have to go out for bid and decide how we're going to spell it out. But we'd be looking at potentially a capital investment of just on the columbarium itself of about $50,000. And then there'd be landscaping to go along with it, associated landscaping, perhaps benches, things of that nature that would be additional expenses. So it will be a big investment for the cemetery board to be in favor of, and for us to consider as a city as well. But we'll see how the bid process is going, see how accurate that guess estimate is.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on? Mr. Resnick.
Might as well, since I was probably the originator of it 2 years ago. We had a discussion with a number of neighbors at the time, and the subject of a columbarium came up, where the national statistic had changed from back in the 1960s and 70s, only 20% of people were cremated, and now that's flipped to about 80%. And we had actually a number of people that said they would do a pre-construction purchase of their crypt or
niche,
drawer, niche, whatever you call it. And it kind of snowballed, because I brought it up in one of the meetings, and Mr. Meredith was sitting in the audience, and he came up to me after the meeting and says, I will spearhead this, and I'll go to the cemetery board meetings, and Mr. Monahan joined him. And so it's been quite a bit of citizen support for this, along the lines of live here, work here, play here, and stay for eternity. So.
Mr. Behrman?
My question was just going to be in relation to where this would be constructed on the cemetery property.
Yeah, we looked at a couple of different locations. The one that I think we're going to focus on in the longer run, we'll see, but I think that's where we're going to focus in the longer run is there's a, if you kind of enter into the cemetery and bank to the right and you follow a road that dead ends towards Wixom Road, there's a curve right before the road dead ends, and that's the area, and that curved area is where we're considering adding the columbarium in that section of the cemetery operation.
And then my follow-up question is just how full the cemetery actually was. I mean, how much space do we still have?
There is a fair amount of space still available, and that's something that we probably need to do more marketing of it, frankly, because I think it's something that a lot of people probably take the assumption that it's full. That's something that came up during our discussions that, I was surprised that you had space available because I just figured a smaller cemetery would be filled up, so to speak, and not have space.
I was surprised at the pricing and how affordable it was compared to other cemeteries around.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we might consider taking a look at to make sure that our costs are in line with our expenses and appropriate to the market and those kind of things. So that's something that we are planning on taking a look at. The columbarium thing is, as Councilman Resnick mentioned, is cremation is becoming more and more popular, and Ed Lynch's testimony on that was the same, that it's becoming the norm as opposed to being a substantial minority of burials in the past. It's becoming the majority of burials currently, and we don't offer that, and I think that that's something that would benefit the service that we provide and the opportunities that we could continue to serve more people by having that option available to people, and I think it's worth looking at with this bid process. And the cemetery fund, if you will, does have more than adequate fund balance available to handle the initial expenditure. And as niches are sold and revenue is recovered, that would rebuild that fund balance. So I think it's something that the fund could certainly support effectively, and I think it would be something that would be beneficial to our service offerings at the cemetery.
Okay, I have a motion to receive and file the cemetery board minutes of June the 5th, 2019. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Second call to the public. This is the opportunity that anybody in the public has to come up and address the council on any issue that's on their mind. So I'll open up the second call to the public. I've already read the rules for public speaking, so I think everybody has retained that. I trust that you have. So, anybody like to come up and address the council on any items, any issues? Seeing no one jump up, I'll close the second call to the public. City manager's comments. Mr. Brown.
So we had the information that was provided on the election that was conducted very ably as usual by our city clerk, Kathy Buck. Congratulations to her and to her deputy clerk, Crystal Opalco, for doing a fine job and a fantastic job in administering that election. I won't go through the individual facts that were provided in the report, but it was the information's in the city manager update. I did have two things that I was going to add late to the game here. I kind of mentioned this one earlier. The Michigan Airline Trail ribbon cutting event that was scheduled for this week has been canceled. Stay tuned for when that gets rescheduled. We're going to try to look for a day that's not involving 9 inches of snow and sub 10 degree temperatures with wind chill. So we'll keep you posted on that, and we expect to have something scheduled again soon. The other thing that I was going to mention that Tim just made me aware of today was our street banner over Pontiac Trail. It was a casualty of the weather as well. It was going to start today. They decided discretion was a better part of valor as well, and they did not proceed with that start on pouring the footings for the poles. I think that's going to take place next week, beginning on Monday, weather permitting again. We'd have about 7 to 10 days of cure time, and then we'd be having the poles installed after that, so you'll be seeing some action there in case people see it on Pontiac Trail. I wanted to make mention of it. It should be starting next week. And those were the two that I was going to add on. Other than that, be happy to try to answer any questions that anybody has. There's a list of dates to remember coming up. Lots of exciting stuff happening in the near future. And the Tree Lighting Festival is one that I'll highlight. Friday, December 6th, 5 to 11 p.m. at the Community Center. Look for the additionally 4-foot taller tree this year that was authorized by council previously.
It's grown. It's actually growing that much?
Yeah, I didn't know metal trees and fake trees could grow, but apparently they can. It just takes money.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda are the council comments. Mr. Gotchel.
No comment tonight, thank you.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to, I know it's one day late, but thank all veterans in the city of Wixom for their service. Without you, we would maybe not be here. Congratulations to the election winners. Thanks, Mike Monahan, for volunteering for the cemetery board. Winter plowing started a lot earlier. Leaf pickup wasn't done yet, but boys did a fine job. I made a comment at 7:28. I got on the road and saw the sidewalk, the safety paths already being cleared, and a good swath of it too. So if the kids had to walk to school today, they would have been able to make it. A question about Pontiac Trail repairs from our mishap back in the summer. I saw a container out there. Will the poles be up and everything for the light the night or whatever? Not the light the night, the decorations.
We're shooting for
holiday.
that. We are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get that up as soon as possible.
So all the insurance issues are taken care of?
That's what we're working out right. Yeah.
Okay.
There's still a couple details.
Very good. That's it. Thank you.
Your Honor, can I just say something real quick, add on to something that Councilman Resnick mentioned? I should have mentioned this earlier, I apologize, but I did want to just say thank you and congratulations to our DPW employees for the job that they did clearing the snow. And I think that most people in Wixom do recognize that we have an outstanding level of service on that, but I do want to compare and contrast something. I have somebody that anecdotally told me about somebody that was in their household that works in a neighboring county, and the roads were not clear at all in the morning. The roads were not clear at all in the midday, and they were not clear at the end of the day when he was coming home from work either. Whereas you compare that to what the situation is in Wixom, we had roads that were cleared, main roads that were cleared, sidewalks that were cleared, subdivision roads that were cleared. And I just want to say thank you to all the employees that work with Tim Sigma in making that possible and making that a reality. They do an outstanding job for us, and I should have mentioned that earlier. I do want to say thank you for the great job they do in servicing the roads in the city of Wixom and making it clear and keeping people safe and allowing people to get to work in a tolerable fashion in these kind of situations. They also took into account the leaves on the side of the road when they were handling the plowing, so they did their best not to cause any bigger of a problem than the snowstorm presented all on its own. So we'll see how it works out when it thaws. But they worked very hard at it, do a great job, and I wanted to say thank you to them.
Thanks. Ms. Grunland Fox.
I would too like to thank all the DPW workers. I was standing on my porch and I saw them come through, and I was going to run out and tell him that there was a pile of leaves there, and he stopped, and I told him, and he said, yeah, I know, and I feel for him because I know it was a pain, because they're trying not to make a mess, and they're trying to get everything plowed, and he did a great job, so they do a really good job. Thank you.
Councilman Behrman.
Well, I'll mirror that. It was very nice coming home last night and my street being plowed, not being able to get into my driveway. That was a very fortunate experience for me. But coming from a neighboring community where I work, they made the decision there not to plow because of the leaves on the street, and the streets are just miserable there right now. And now with it freezing, I really don't know how that's going to work there. So I do appreciate that our streets are always plowed quickly and efficiently. And thank you to all of the residents that obviously made the decision to support me running, and thank you for everyone on this council that has offered words of encouragement. I look forward to serving this community.
Thank you. Mayor-elect Beagle.
Thank you. I just want to welcome Councilmember Berman and welcome back Councilmember Grunland Fox to the dais. I'm looking forward to working with both of you guys. Thanks to the DPW for their good work yesterday plowing the roads. Thank you to the clerk for another successful, stress-free election. Thank you to Mike Monahan for stepping up to be volunteer on the cemetery board. And thank you to all the voters for all their support, and thanks for coming out and voting. And last and certainly not least, I'd just like to thank everybody for all their thoughts and prayers and supports on the passing of my father. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. Again, congratulations to all the winners of the past election. I usually say congratulations to the winners and condolences to losers. There weren't any losers, though. Everybody won, so that's great. It's a good, just a good way to start things off. I especially want to thank Kathy Buck and Crystal and all of the volunteer workers that work the polls. It's a long day for them, certainly, and every time we have an election, it's handled so flawlessly that it's. I think we're spoiled because I think that they do an excellent job, and I really appreciate their efforts. You know, the DPW. I go back a while. I remember when I moved into this community 45 years ago, and I met Bob Trombley. Bob Trombley was the guy that was the head of the DPW at the time, and he found out that my wife was pregnant and expecting our child. This is we moved in around October, November, and she was due. My wife was due in December. And Bob Trombley found out about it, and he said to me, "Listen, if something happens where you really need to, I can get a plow and get her to the hospital if you need to, because there wasn't a lot of homes out here at the time, of course, and it was really something, and that's the kind of service that we have here in Wixom, and the DPW has always been, I'm not suggesting that you should call the DPW if your wife's pregnant. That's just an example of the kind of service that we provide. I happen to be a police officer here in Wixom. That's how I met him. So that's kind of how I got involved there. But it's great job, Tim. Everybody's doing a great job, and except for that snow that you leave at the bottom of my driveway a couple times a day, you know, wonderful job. Having said all that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Go home.